Job interviewer to Jack. What is your biggest weakness? Jack, honesty. Job interviewer, honesty? I don't think that is a weakness. Jack, I don't give a shit about what you think. 3 spies are captured by a terrorist group, French, German, and an Italian. The captors first take the French spy for interrogation. They tie his hands behind a chair and torture him for 2 hours before he spills the beans. The captors throw him back into the cell and drag the German in for their interrogation. Like before, they tie his hands behind the chair and begin torturing him. The German resists for 4 hours before giving in. The captors throw him back into the cell and then drag the Italian. They again tie his hands behind the chair and begin torturing him. 4 hours pass by, then 8, then 16, and even 24 hours later, the interrogators had not gotten a word out of the Italian. Frustrated, they throw him back into the cell. Impressed by the Italian's resistance, the other 2 spies ask him, "How did you manage to keep quiet for so long?" The Italian responds, "Oh, I wanted to talk, but I just could not move my hands." The maid requested a raise, and the lady of the house was unhappy about it. She asked, "Now, Jessica, why do you think you deserve a raise?" Jessica, "There are 3 reasons why I requested the raise. First, I iron better than you do." Lady of the house, "Who said that?" Jessica, "Why, your husband." Lady of the house, "Oh, okay. What is the second reason?" Jessica, "Second, I cook better than you." Lady of the house, "Who said that?" Jessica, "Your husband." Lady of the house, "And what is the third reason?" Jessica, "Third, I am better in bed than you." Lady of the house, angrily, "Did my husband say that?" Jessica, "No, the pool boy did." Jessica got the raise she was looking for. A young boy enters a barber shop, and the barber whispers to his customer, "Just watch. This is the dumbest kid in the whole world." The barber puts a dollar bill in his right hand and a quarter in his left. He then asks the boy, "Which one do you want?" The boy takes the quarter and leaves the shop. The barber chuckles and tells his customer, "Didn't I tell you, that kid is really dumb?" Even after so many years, he still has not learnt to take the dollar. Sometime later, the customer sees the kid having an ice cream outside. He walks up to him and asks, "Hey son, I don't think you are dumb. How come you have never picked a dollar?" The kid answers, "Because the day I take the dollar, the game is over." A dog accidentally strays into the jungle. A lion sees the dog and thinks to himself, "I have never seen his kind before. Bet he will make a tasty morsel." As the lion approaches the dog, the mongrel sees some bones next to a tree. Chewing one of the bones, he loudly exclaims, "That was some good lion meat." Hearing this, the lion stops dead in his track and quietly slinks away. A monkey, sitting on a treetop nearby, sees the whole exchange. Wishing to get on the good side of the king of the jungle, the monkey narrates the whole situation to the lion. The lion and the monkey rush back to the spot where the dog was last seen. Seeing the monkey with the lion, the dog immediately understands what happened. Instead of panicking, he paces back and forth, loudly exclaiming, "I should not have trusted that monkey. It has been over an hour and he has still not got me another lion." A new father sits down with his dad to have a drink. "Dad, son, now that you have a kid of your own, it is time I gave you something." New father, "Dad, you don't need." Dad, "Yes, I do. You have earned it." Saying this, the dad passes on a handwritten book titled Parenting Tips. New father, "Dad, I don't know what to say. I am honored." Dad, with a twinkle in his eyes, "High honored. I am Dad." A family with 2 teens checks into a hotel. The father goes to the front desk and says, "I hope the porn is disabled." The guy at the desk replies, "It's just regular porn, you sick bastard." A young Catholic couple, on their way to get married, are involved in a fatal car accident. They find themselves outside the pearly gates waiting for St. Peter to process them into heaven. With marriage being on their mind, the first question they asked St. Peter was, "Can we get married in heaven?" St. Peter said, "Let me go find out." The couple waited. While waiting, they began to wonder what would happen if their marriage didn't work out. Could you get a divorce in heaven? After 3 months, St. Peter finally returns, looking completely bedraggled. "Yes," he informs the couple, "you can get married in heaven." "Great," replied the couple, "but we were just wondering, what if things don't work out? Could we also get a divorce in heaven?" St. Peter, red-faced with anger, slammed his clipboard onto the ground. "Oh, come on," he shouted. "It took me 3 months to find a priest up here. Do you have any idea how long it'll take me to find a lawyer?" On his deathbed, an old Jew says to his wife, "Oh, Sarah, when the shop burned down, you were right beside me." The wife nodded dutifully. "I was, Moshe." He labored a bit and then said, "When the Nazis drove us out of our beloved Deutschland, you were beside me again." The wife tearfully said, "I was, Moshe." "And now you're at my deathbed, aren't you?" added Moshe. The wife replied, "I am, darling." The old Jew sighed, "I'm starting to think you're bad luck, Sarah." A Jew and an Arab go into a bakery. The Arab steals 3 pastries and puts them in his pocket and says to the Jew, "See how good I am?" The owner didn't see a thing. The Jew says to the Arab, "That's typical of you Arabs. I am going to show you an honest way to get the same result." He asks the owner of the bakery and says, "Give me that pastry and I will show you a magic trick." Intrigued, the owner accepts and gives him a pastry. The Jew swallows it and asks for another one. The owner gives him another one. Then the Jew swallows that one and asks for a third pastry and eats that too. The owner is starting to wonder where the magic trick is and asks, "So what did you do with the pastries?" The Jew replies, "Look in the Arab's back pocket." A gorilla dies of old age just before a zoo opens. It is the only gorilla at the zoo. Since the zoo is not very profitable, and the gorilla is their most popular attraction by far, they cannot afford to go a day without it. So the zoo owner asks one of his workers to wear a gorilla suit they have in storage and pretend to be the gorilla. Quickly, the new gorilla becomes the most popular craze at the zoo. People from all over are coming to see the human-like gorilla. About a month in, the craze has started to wear off. So, to get people's attention back, he decides to climb over his enclosure and hang from the net ceiling above the lion's den next to him. A large crowd of people gather watching the spectacle in awe and terror. The man loses his grip and falls to the floor of the lion's den. The man starts screaming, "Help! Help!" The lion pounces on him from behind and whispers in his ear, "Shut up right now, or you're going to get us both fired." In a circus, there is a popular show with a lion. The animal trainer makes the lion open his mouth, pulls his dick out, puts it in the animal's mouth and smacks it on the head. After packing away his dong, he says, "I'll give $500 to anyone who dares to try this." The audience is in silence, but after a while a tiny old lady stands up and mutters, "Okay, I'll do it. But only if you promise not to hit me that hard on the head." Why are crazy ex-girlfriends like a box of chocolate? Because they both end up killing your dog. Stanley died in a fire accident and his body was burned badly. The morgue needed someone to identify the body. So they sent for his two best deer hunting friends, Jim and Alan. The three men had always hunted and fished together and were longtime members of a hunting camp. Jim arrived first, and when the mortician pulled back the sheet, Jim said, "The face is burned up pretty bad. You better roll him over." The mortician rolled him over and Jim said, "Nope, this ain't Stanley." The mortician thought this was rather strange, so he brought Alan in to confirm the identity of the body. Alan looked at the body and said, "The face is burned up pretty bad. You better roll him over." The mortician rolled him over and Alan said, "Nope, this ain't Stanley." The mortician asked, "How can you tell?" Alan said, "Well, Stanley had two assholes." "What? He had two assholes?" asked the mortician. "Yup, everybody in the town used to say, 'There's Stanley with them two assholes.' I was walking around town the other day when I saw these two jerk-offs wearing matching outfits. I mean, down to the belt same outfits. So, I yelled over to them, 'Hey faggots! Did you plan that?' Anyways, the bastards arrested me." How can you tell the sex of an ant by dropping it in water? If it sinks, it is a girl ant. If it floats, it is a boy ant. What did the physicist say to the young man who was about to jump off the Empire State Building? "Don't do it. You have so much potential." A photojournalist saw a midget prisoner clambering down a prison wall. The prisoner sneered just as the journalist snapped a picture. The next day's paper had the picture with the caption, "Just a little condescending." A man was stopped by the police around 2 a.m. The officer asked him where he was going at that time of night. The man replied, "I'm on my way to a lecture about alcohol abuse and the effects it has on the human body, as well as smoking and staying out late." The officer then asked, "Really? Who's giving that lecture at this time of night?" The man replied, "That would be my wife." A blind man walks into a bar. Thinking he'd break the ice with the bartender, he asks, "Want to hear a blonde joke?" In a hushed voice, a man beside him says, "Before you tell that joke, you should know our bartender is blonde. Our bouncer is blonde. I'm a 6 feet 4 inches black belt. The man sitting on the other side of me is 6'2", 250 pounds, and a rugby player. The guy sitting next to you is pushing 300, 6 feet 6 inches, and he's a wrestler. We're all blonde. So you think about it, mister. Do you really want to tell that joke?" The blind man sat for a second, thinking over the odds, and then replied, "No, not if I have to explain it 5 times. A 94-year-old man went to his doctor for his annual checkup. The doctor asked the man how he was feeling, and the 94-year-old said, "Things are great, and I've never felt better. I now have a 20-year-old bride who is pregnant with my child. What do you think about that, doc?" The doctor considered the question for a minute, and then began to tell a story. "I have an older friend, much like you, who is an avid hunter and never misses a season. One day he was setting off to go hunting. In a bit of a hurry, he accidentally picked up his walking cane instead of his gun. As he neared a lake, he came across a very large male beaver sitting at the water's edge. He realized he left his gun at home, and so he couldn't shoot the magnificent creature. Out of habit, he raised his cane, aimed it at the animal as if it was his favorite hunting rifle, and yelled, 'Bang, bang!' Miraculously, 2 shots rang out and the beaver fell dead. Now, what do you think of that?" asked the doctor. The senior citizen replied, "Logic would strongly suggest that somebody else pumped a few rounds into that beaver." The doctor replied, "My point exactly." A man wakes up one morning to find a gorilla on his roof. So he looks up the yellow pages and sure enough, there's an ad for gorilla removers. He calls the number, and the gorilla remover says he'll be there in 30 minutes. the gorilla remover arrives and gets out of his van. He's got a ladder, a baseball bat, a shotgun, and a huge, ferocious-looking dog. "What are you going to do?" the homeowner asks. "I'm going to put up this ladder against the roof. Then I'm going to go up there and knock the gorilla off the roof with the bat. When the gorilla falls off, the dog is trained to grab the gorilla's testicles and squeeze. The gorilla will be subdued enough for me to lock him in the cage in the back of the van," says the gorilla remover, and hands him the shotgun. "What's the shotgun for?" asks the surprised homeowner. "If the gorilla knocks me off the roof, please shoot the dog." A couple celebrates their 30th anniversary by visiting the fence against which they first made love. The husband says, "Come on, let us do it again, for old time's sake." The wife agrees. They both undress and repeat the act. Afterwards, the husband says, "You're even better than you were 30 years ago." His wife replies, "That fence wasn't electrified 30 years ago." At a hotel restaurant, a man sees an attractive woman sitting alone at the next table. Suddenly, she sneezes, and a glass eye comes flying out of her eye socket. He snatches it from the air and hands it back to her. "This is so embarrassing," the woman says, and she pops her eye back in place. "I'm sorry to have disturbed you. Let me buy dinner to make it up to you. May I join you?" He nods and agrees. The woman is a stimulating conversationalist, stunningly pretty, and the man finds they have a lot in common. He gets her phone number and asks, "You are the most charming woman I've ever encountered. Are you this nice to every guy you meet?" "No," she replies. "You just happen to catch my eye." What's the difference between American girls and Middle Eastern girls? American girls get stoned before they commit adultery. Dad, son, I don't think you are cut out to be a mime. Son, was it something I said? Dad, yes. A Texan was walking home late at night and spots a woman in the shadows. $20, she whispers. Steve had never been with a hooker before, but decides what the hell, it's only $20. So they do it in the bushes. They're going at it for a minute when all of a sudden a light flashes on them. It is a police officer. "What's going on here, people?" asks the officer. "I was just making love to me wife," the Texan answers, annoyed. "Oh, I'm sorry," says the cop. "I didn't know." "Well, neither did I, until you shone that light in her face." A priest was walking through a shady part of town and heard a girl whisper, "Hey, mister, want a blowjob?" "Only $20, she asked. No thank you," said the priest. "What's a blowjob?" he wondered. Later that night, on the way back, another woman asked him the same question. "Hey, buddy, want a blowjob?" "Only $20. "Ah, no, not tonight," said the priest and waked on. For the rest of the walk home, he puzzled over what those women might be offering him. Finally, he reached the church and saw the Mother Superior in the hallway. "Mother Superior, what's a blowjob?" $20, Father, same as in town." "Did you hear about the man who stole a calendar? He got 12 months. A homeless man knocks on a woman's door, looking for help. Think you could spare a few bucks? Maybe some food?" The woman thinks to herself for a few seconds, then says, "You could do some handy work around here. I'd be glad to give you $30 if you paint my porch. There's some green paint and a brush right around the corner." He thanks her and heads towards the bucket. She returns inside and resumes her knitting. After about an hour, she hears a knocking again at her door and goes to open it. She is greeted by the same man, green paint splattered on his clothes and in his beard, a wide grin on his face. "All done, ma'am, and by the way, it's a Cadillac, not a porch." Success is a little like being pregnant. Everyone congratulates you, but no one asks how many times you got screwed to get there. Opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one, but not necessary, you like someone else's. A man goes to a bar and sees a fat girl dancing on a table. He walks over to her and says, "Wow, nice legs." She is flattered and replies, "You really think so?" The man says, "Oh, definitely. Most tables would have collapsed by now." A woman awakens in the middle of the night to find her husband is not in bed. She puts on her robe and goes downstairs to look for him. She finds him sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of hot cocoa in front of him. He appears to be in deep thought, just staring at the wall. She watches as he wipes away a tear from his eye. "What's the matter, dear? Why are you down here at this time of night?" she whispers as she steps into the room. The husband looks up from his drink. It's the 20th anniversary of the day we met. She can't believe he has remembered and starts to tear up. The husband continues, "Do you remember 20 years ago when we started dating? I was 20 and you were only 18, he said. Once again, the wife is touched to tears thinking that her husband is so caring and sensitive. "Yes, I do," she replies. The husband pauses, the words coming out in a rush. "Do you remember when your father caught us in the back seat of my car?" "Yes, I remember," said the wife, lowering herself into a chair beside him. The husband continued, "Do you remember when he shoved the shotgun in my face and said, 'Either you marry my daughter, or I will make sure you spend the next 20 years in prison?'" "I remember that too," she replied softly. He sighed as he wiped another tear away from his cheek and said, "I would have gotten out today." A man who just died is delivered to a local mortuary wearing an expensive, expertly tailored black suit. The female blonde mortician asks the deceased's wife how she would like the body dressed. She points out that the man does look good in the black suit he is already wearing. The widow, however, says that she always thought her husband looked his best in blue, and that she wants him in a blue suit. She gives the blonde mortician a blank check and says, "I don't care what it costs, but please have my husband in a blue suit for the viewing." The woman returns the next day for the wake. To her delight, she finds her husband dressed in a gorgeous blue suit with a subtle chalk stripe. The suit fits him perfectly. She says to the mortician, "Whatever this cost, I'm very satisfied. You did an excellent job and I'm very grateful. How much did you spend?" To her astonishment, the blonde mortician presents her with the blank check. "There's no charge," she says. "No, really. I must compensate you for the cost of that exquisite blue suit," she says. "Honestly, ma'am," the blonde says, "it costs nothing. You see, a deceased gentleman of about your husband's size was brought in shortly after you left yesterday, and he was wearing an attractive blue suit. I asked his wife if she minded him going to his grave wearing a black suit instead, and she said it made no difference as long as he looked nice. So I just switched the heads." Wife texts her husband on a very cold winter's morning, "Windows frozen, won't open." Husband texts back, "Gently pour some lukewarm water over it." Wife texts back 5 minutes later, "Computer is really screwed up now." Why did the worker at the keyboard manufacturing unit get fired? For putting in too many shifts. Cletus is passing by Billy Bob's hay barn one day when, through a gap in the door, he sees Billy Bob doing a slow and sensual striptease in front of an old John Deere tractor. He performs a slow pirouette and gently slides off first the right strap of his overalls, followed by the left. He then hunches his shoulders forward and, in a classic striptease move, lets his overalls fall down to his hips, revealing a torn and frayed plaid shirt. Then, grabbing both sides of his shirt, he rips it apart to reveal his stained t-shirt underneath. With a final flourish, he tears the t-shirt from his body and hurls his baseball cap onto a pile of hay. Having seen enough, Cletus rushes in and says, "What the world are you doing, Billy Bob?" "Good grief, Cletus, you scared the bejeebers out of me," says an obviously embarrassed Billy Bob. "But me and the wife been having trouble lately in the bedroom department, and the therapist suggested I do something sexy to attract her." A woman was shopping at her local supermarket where she selected a half-gallon of 2% milk, a carton of eggs, a quart of orange juice, a head of romaine lettuce, a 2 pounds can of coffee, and a 1 pound package of bacon. As she was unloading her items onto the conveyor belt to check out, a drunk standing behind her was watching. While the cashier was ringing up her purchases, the drunk calmly stated, "You must be single." The woman was a bit startled by this proclamation, but she was intrigued by the derelict's intuition, since she was indeed single. She looked at her 6 items on the belt and saw nothing particularly unusual about her selections that could have tipped of the drunk to her marital status. Curiosity getting the better of her, she said, "Well, you know what? You're absolutely correct. But how on earth did you know that?" The drunk replied, "'Cause you're ugly." A woman decided to have a facelift for her birthday. She spent $5,000 and felt really good about the results. On her way home, she stopped at a dress shop to look around. As she was leaving, she said to the sales clerk, "I hope you don't mind me asking, but how old do you think I am?" "About 35, was the reply. "I'm actually 47, the woman said, feeling really happy. After that, she went into McDonald's for lunch and asked the order taker the same question. He replied, "Oh, you look about 29. "I am actually 47, she said, feeling really good. While standing at the bus stop, she asked an old man the same question. He replied, "I am 85 years old and my eyesight is going. But when I was young, there was a sure way of telling a woman's age. If I put my hand up your skirt, I will be able to tell your exact age." There was no one around, so the woman said, "What the hell?" and let him slip his hand up her skirt. After feeling around for a while, the old man said, "Okay, you are 47. Stunned, the woman said, "That was brilliant. How did you do that?" The old man replied, "I was behind you in line at McDonald's." A cop is out on patrol and sees a car parked in the local lover's lane with the windows all steamed up. He knocks on the driver's window, and the guy inside rolls it down. The cop sees that there is a guy sitting in the front seat, fully clothed, and a girl in the back seat, also fully clothed. "What are you up to here, son?" "Well, officer, I'm reading a magazine, as you can see." "And what's she doing back there?" "I think she's playing a game on her phone." "Have you been drinking tonight?" "No, sir. I'm only 20. "And how old is she?" The guy looks at his watch and says, "Sir, in 11 minutes, she'll be 18. During a funeral procession, the pallbearers accidentally bump into a wall and hear a faint moan. They open the casket and find out that the woman is actually alive. She lives for 10 more years and then dies. There is another funeral for her. At the end of the service, the pallbearers carry out the casket. As they are walking out, the husband cries out, 'Watch out for the wall! Watch out for the wall!' So the other day I went to the supermarket, and I was there for literally 5 minutes. When I came out, there was a motorcycle cop writing a parking ticket. So I went up to him and said, 'Come on, buddy. How about giving a guy a break?' He ignored me and continued writing the ticket. So I called him a pencil-necked Nazi lover. He glared at me and started writing another ticket for worn tires. So I then asked him if his psychiatrist makes him lie face down on the couch, 'cause he's so ugly. He finished the second ticket and put it on the windshield with the first. Then he started writing a third ticket. This went on for about 20 minutes. The more I insulted him, the more tickets he wrote. I didn't care. My car was parked around the corner. Several men are in the locker room of a golf club. A cell phone on a bench rings and a man engages the hands-free speaker function and begins to talk. Everyone else in the room stops to listen. Man: hello, woman. Honey, it's me. Are you at the club? Man: yes. Woman: I'm at the mall now and found this beautiful leather coat. It's only $1,000. Is it okay if I buy it? Man: sure. Go ahead if you like it that much. Woman: I also stopped by the Mercedes dealership and saw the new 2007 models. I saw one I really liked. Man: how much? Woman: $65,000. Man: okay, but for that price I want it with all the options. Woman: great. Oh, and one more thing. The house we wanted last year is back on the market. They're asking $950,000. Man: well, then go ahead and give them an offer, but just offer $900,000. Woman: okay, I'll see you later. I love you. Man: bye, I love you too. The man hangs up. The other men in the locker room are looking at him in astonishment. He then grins sheepishly and asks, anyone know whose phone this is? A piece of toast and a hard-boiled egg walked into a bar. The bartender says, sorry, we don't serve breakfast here. The sixth grade science teacher, Mrs. Parks, asked her class, which human body part increases to 10 times its size when stimulated? No one answered until little Mary stood up and said, you should not be asking sixth graders a question like that. I'm going to tell my parents, and they will go and tell the principal, who will then fire you. Mrs. Parks ignored her and asked the question again. Which body part increases to 10 times its size when stimulated? Little Mary's mouth fell open. Then she said to those around her, boy, is she going to get in big trouble? The teacher continued to ignore her and said to the class, anybody? Finally, Billy stood up, looked around nervously, and said, the body part that increases 10 times its size when stimulated is the pupil of the eye. Mrs. Parks said, very good, Billy, then turned to Mary and continued. As for you, young lady, I have 3 things to say. 1. You have a dirty mind. 2. You didn't read your homework. And 3. One day you are going to be very, very disappointed. A koala was sitting in a tree smoking a joint. A lizard walks up and says, hey koala, what are you doing? The koala answers, smoking a joint. Come up and have some. The lizard climbs up and the two share the joint. After a while, the lizard says his mouth is dry and excuses himself to a nearby river to have a drink. The lizard, so stoned, leans over too far and falls in. A crocodile swims out to rescue him. When they get onto dry land, the croc asks, what's wrong with you, lizard? The lizard tells him that he was smoking a joint with a koala, and he got too stoned and fell in while taking a drink. The croc has to see this for himself, so he asks the lizard to take him to the koala. When they get back to the tree, the croc looks up at the koala and says, hey, you? The koala looks down and says, shit dude, how much water did you drink? A woman of advanced age visited her physician to ask his help in reviving her husband's lagging libido. How about trying Viagra? Asked the doctor. Not a chance, she said. He won't even take an aspirin. In that case, just add it to his coffee and he will never know. Update me after a week or so, replied the doctor. A week later, the woman came to see the doctor again and exclaimed, it was horrid. Just terrible, doctor. Really? What happened? Asked the doctor. Well, I did as you advised and slipped it in his coffee, and the effect was almost immediate. He jumped straight up, with a twinkle in his eye, and with his pants a-bulging fiercely. With one swoop of his arm, he sent the cups and tablecloth flying, ripped me clothes to tatters, and took me then and there. He took me passionately on the tabletop. So why was it terrible? Was the sex not good? Asked the doctor. 'Twas the best sex I've had in 25 years. But I'll never be able to show me face in Starbucks again. What is better than roses on a piano? Tulips on an organ. An African lumberjack is interviewing for a job at a major logging company. The foreman decides to take a practical route and hands the lumberjack an axe. "Take a couple swings at that tree over there," the foreman said. The lumberjack walks over to the tree and fells it in a single chop. "Holy smokes, you've got quite the arm. You're absolutely hired, but I need to know what you can do. Try your hand at this tree over here." The foreman points out a much larger tree. 1, 2 swings and the tree crashes to the ground. "That's incredible," cried the foreman. "Wherever did you learn to chop like that?" "In the Sahara forest," replied the lumberjack. "Don't you mean the Sahara Desert?" asked the foreman. "That's why I'm here." A pirate walks into bar and sits down. The bartender notices that he has a peg leg, a hook for a hand, and a patch over one eye. The pirate orders a beer, and while he's pouring it, the bartender asks, "So what's the story with the leg?" "Well, it were many a year ago," says the pirate. "I were walking on the deck o' me ship, and a rogue wave swept me overboard, and a shark swum up and bit me leg clean off. I swum ashore and were fitted fair a peg leg that very night." "That's terrible," says the bartender. "What about the hand?" "Well, it were the very next day," says the pirate. "I were walking on the deck o' me ship, and a rogue wave swept me overboard again, and a whale came up and bit me hand clean off. I swum ashore and were fitted fair a hook that very night." "Wow," says the bartender. "So what about the eye?" "Well, it were the very next day," says the pirate. "I were walking on the deck o' me ship, and I were looking out for rogue waves, and a seagull flew over and shit right in me eye." "Oh man," says the bartender. "And that blinded you?" "Well, no," says the pirate, "but it were me first day with the hook." This couple had a lovely, happy marriage. The only friction in their marriage was the husband's habit of farting loudly every morning when he awoke. The noise would wake his wife, and the smell would make her eyes water and make her gasp for air. Every morning she would plead with him to stop ripping them off because it was making her sick. He told her he couldn't stop and that it was perfectly natural. She told him to see a doctor. She was concerned that one day he would blow his guts out. The years went by and he continued to rip them out. Then one Thanksgiving morning, as she was preparing the turkey for dinner and he was upstairs sound asleep, she looked at the bowl where she had put the turkey innards and neck, gizzard, liver, and all the spare parts, and a malicious thought came to her. She took the bowl and went upstairs where her husband was sound asleep, and gently pulling back the bed covers, she pulled back the elastic waistband of his underpants and emptied the bowl of turkey guts into his shorts. Some time later she heard her husband waken with his usual trumpeting, which was followed by a blood-curdling scream and the sound of frantic footsteps as he ran into the bathroom. The wife could hardly control herself as she rolled on the floor laughing, tears in her eyes. After years of torture, she reckoned she had got him back pretty good. About 20 minutes later, her husband came downstairs in his blood-stained underpants with a look of horror on his face. She bit her lip as she asked him what the matter was. He said, "Honey, you were right. All these years you have warned me and I didn't listen to you." "What do you mean?" asked his wife. "Well, You always told me that one day I would end up farting my guts out, and today it finally happened. But by the grace of God, some Vaseline, and these 2 fingers, I think I got them all back in. A little girl asks her granddad, "Would you make a frog noise for me?" The granddad, confused, asks, "Why?" The little girl replies, "Dad says when you croak, we are all going to Disneyland." A couple, both in their 70s, went to a sex therapist's office. The doctor asked, "What can I do for you?" The man said, "Will you watch us have sex?" The doctor looked puzzled, but agreed. When the couple finished, the doctor said, "There's nothing wrong with the way you have sex," and charged them $50. This happened several weeks in a row. The couple would make an appointment, have sex with no problems, pay the doctor, and then leave. Finally, the doctor asked, "Just exactly what are you trying to find out?" "We're not trying to find out anything," the husband replied. "She's married and we can't go to her house. I'm married and we can't go to my house. The Holiday Inn charges $90. The Hilton charges $108. We do it here for $50, and I get $43 back from Medicare." A woman arrived at a party, and while scanning the guests, she spotted an attractive man standing alone. She approached him, smiled, and said, "Hello, my name is Carmen." "That's a beautiful name," he replied. "Is it a family name?" "No," she replied. "As a matter of fact, I gave it to myself. It represents the things that I enjoy the most, cars and men. Therefore, I chose Carmen." "What's your name?" she asked. He answered, "B.J. Titzingolf." It was raining hard, and a big puddle had formed in front of an Irish pub. An old man stood beside the puddle holding a stick with a string on the end and jiggled it up and down in the water. A curious gentleman asked what he was doing. "Fishing," replied the old man. "Poor old fool," thought the gentleman, so he invited the old man to have a drink in the pub. Feeling he should start some conversation while they were sipping their whiskey, the gentleman asked, "And how many have you caught?" "You're the 8th. There was this professional assassin who charged $1,000 a bullet. A guy comes up to him in the bar one day and says, 'Are you the guy who charges $1,000 a bullet?' 'Yup.' 'What if you miss?' He looks at the man, deadly serious. 'I don't miss.' 'Okay, well, I've got $2,000 here. I just found out my wife is having an affair with my best friend. They're at the motel together right now.' 'Let's go,' the assassin says. So they drive to a store across the street from the motel and climb up on the roof. The assassin takes out his rifle and attaches the scope. "They're in room 21. I want you to shoot her in the head, and I want you to blow his dick off." The assassin looks through his scope. He keeps staring for several minutes, not taking the shot. "Well, what are you waiting for?" the husband asks. "Hold on 2 more minutes. I think I can save you $1,000. A mafia godfather finds out that his bookkeeper of 20 years, Guido, has cheated him out of $10 million. Guido is deaf, which is why he got the job in the first place. The godfather assumed that since Guido could not hear anything, he could never testify in court. When the godfather goes to confront Guido about his missing $10 million, he takes along his personal lawyer because he knows sign language. The godfather tells the lawyer, "Ask him where the money is." The lawyer, using sign language, asks Guido, "Where's the money?" Guido signs back, "I don't know what you are talking about." The lawyer tells the godfather, "He says he doesn't know what you are talking about." The godfather pulls out a pistol, puts it to Guido's head and says, "Ask him again or I'll kill him." The lawyer signs to Guido, "He'll kill you if you don't tell him." Guido trembles and signs back, "Okay, you win." The money is in a brown briefcase, buried behind the shed at my cousin Bruno's house. The godfather asks the lawyer, "What did he say?" The lawyer replies, "He says you don't have the balls to pull the trigger." A serial masturbator goes to the doctor. Doctor tells him, "You've got to stop masturbating." Man asks, "Why?" Doctor says, "So that I can examine you." One day, a wife came home early and found her husband in their bedroom making love to a very attractive young woman. Naturally, she was very upset. "You are a disrespectful pig," she cried. "How dare you do this to me? I'm a faithful wife, the mother of your children. I'm leaving you. I want a divorce right away." The husband replied, "Hang on just a minute, love, so at least I can tell you what happened." "Go ahead," she sobbed, "but they'll be the last words you'll say to me." So the husband began, "Well, I was getting into the car to drive home, and this young lady here asked me for a lift. She looked so down and out and defenseless that I took pity on her and let her into the car. I noticed that she was very thin, not well dressed, and very dirty. She told me that she hadn't eaten for 3 days. So, in my compassion, I brought her home and warmed up the enchiladas I made for you last night. The ones you wouldn't eat because you're afraid you'll put on weight. The poor thing devoured them in moments. Since she needed a good cleanup, I suggested a shower, and while she was doing that, I noticed her clothes were dirty and full of holes, so I threw them away. Then, as she needed clothes, I gave her the designer jeans that you have had for a few years, but don't wear because you say they are too tight. I also gave her the underwear that was your anniversary present, which you don't wear because I don't have good taste. I found the sexy blouse my sister gave you for Christmas that you don't wear just to annoy her, and I also donated those boots you bought at the expensive boutique and don't wear because someone at work has a pair the same." The husband took a quick breath and continued, "She was so grateful for my understanding and help that as I walked her to the door, she turned to me with tears in her eyes and said, 'Do you have anything else that your wife doesn't use?' Johnny wanted to have sex with a girl in his office, but she belonged to someone else. One day, Johnny got so frustrated that he went up to her and said, 'I'll give you a $100 if you let me have sex with you.' The girl said, 'No way.' Johnny said, 'I'll be fast. I'll throw the money on the floor, you bend down, and I'll be finished by the time you pick it up.' She thought for a moment and said that she would have to consult her boyfriend. So she called her boyfriend and told him the story. Her boyfriend replied, 'Ask him for $200. Pick up the money very fast. He won't even be able to get his pants down.' So she agrees and accepts the proposal. Half an hour goes by, and the boyfriend is waiting for his girlfriend to call. Finally, after 45 minutes, the boyfriend calls and asks what happened. She responds, 'The bastard used coins.' A young guy from North Dakota moves to Florida and goes to a big everything under one roof department store looking for a job. The manager says, 'Do you have any sales experience?' The kid says, 'Yeah. I was a vacuum salesman back in North Dakota.' Well, the boss was unsure, but he liked the kid and figured he'd give him a shot, so he gave him the job. 'You start tomorrow. I'll come down after we close and see how you did.' His first day on the job was rough, but he got through it. After the store was locked up, the boss came down to the sales floor. 'How many customers bought something from you today?' The kid frowns and looks at the floor and mutters, 'One.' The boss says, 'Just one? Our salespeople average sales to 20 to 30 customers a day. That will have to change, and soon, if you'd like to continue your employment here. We have very strict standards for our sales force here in Florida. One sale a day might have been acceptable in North Dakota, but you're not on the farm anymore, son.' The kid took his beating, but continued to look at his shoes, so the boss felt kinda bad for chewing him out on his first day. He asked, semi-sarcastically, "So, how much was your one sale for?" The kid looks up at his boss and says, $101,237.65. The boss, astonished, says $101,237.65? What the heck did you sell? The kid says, "Well, first, I sold him some new fish hooks. Then I sold him a new fishing rod to go with his new hooks. Then I asked him where he was going fishing, and he said down the coast. So I told him he was going to need a boat. So we went down to the boat department, and I sold him a twin-engine Chris Craft. Then he said he didn't think his Honda Civic would pull it, so I took him down to the automotive department and sold him that 4x4 Expedition." The boss said, "A guy came in here to buy a fish hook, and you sold him a boat and a truck?" The kid said no, the guy came in here to buy tampons for his wife, and I said, "Dude, your weekend's shot, you should go fishing." Three baseball fans walk out of a bar. They turn a corner and see a pair of legs sticking out from behind a bush. They push the bush aside and find a woman dead and completely naked. They call the police, and as they wait, they decide to cover the woman up. The Cubs fan takes off his hat and covers her left breast. The Royals fan takes off his hat and covers her right breast. The Yankees fan takes off his hat and covers her crotch. The police arrive. The detective walks around the scene. He lifts the Cubs hat, looks underneath, sets it back down. He lifts the Royals hat, looks underneath and sets it back down. He then lifts the Yankees hat, looks underneath, starts to set it back down, stops, does a double take, sets the hat back down slowly, and starts to write furiously in the little book. The Yankees fan is upset by this. He asks, "What was that? Haven't you seen one of those before?" The detective replies, "You misunderstand. Normally when I look under a Yankees hat, I usually see an asshole. Burglars are getting very clever these days. Last night, my wife woke me up, 'Darling, darling, there's a burglar downstairs.' So I go down, check every room and don't find anyone. Then I realized I don't have a wife, and when I went back upstairs, my bed and TV were gone." 3 vampires are having a competition to find out who's the most vicious vampire amongst them. The first one says, "Watch this." He flies fast, at about 100 miles/hour. After 10 minutes, he comes back with blood all over his mouth. "What happened?" asked the other vampires. "Did you see that house over there?" he inquired. The others nod their heads. "Well, I killed the entire family and sucked the blood dry," he replied. "Wow, fascinating," replied the other 2. Then the second one takes the next turn. "Watch and learn, guys." He flies even faster, at about 120 miles/hour. After only 5 minutes, he comes back with blood all over his mouth and his neck. "What happened?" they asked. "Do you see that village over there?" he inquired. The others nod their heads. "Well, I killed every last person on that village and sucked the blood dry." "Wow, amazing," replied the other 2. Finally, the last one steps up and says, "Don't blink or you'll miss it." He flies really fast, even faster than the other 2, at about 140 miles/hour. After mere 30 seconds, he comes back with blood all over his mouth, his neck and his nose. What did you do?" they asked. "Do you see that big ash tree over there?" he inquired. Yes," they replied awestruck. "Well, I didn't." "Old lady, doctor, I have this terrible problem. I fart frequently, but my farts are silent and do not stink at all. As a matter of fact, while we were talking, I must have farted at least 10 times. Since they are silent and they don't smell, no one is any wiser. Doctor, I see. Why don't you have these pills every day and come see me again next week? When she comes back the next week, the old lady is highly agitated. Old lady, doctor, I have no idea what you gave me, but my farts, though still silent, have started smelling horrible. Doctor, good. Now that your sinuses are cleared, we can start working on your hearing. A passenger in a cab leaned over and tapped the driver's shoulder to ask him a question. The driver screamed in panic, swerved, lost control of the car, and drove over the pavement, stopping inches short of driving through a restaurant. There was stunned silence in the car for a few seconds, and then the driver said, I am sorry. You really scared the daylights out of me. The shaken passenger apologized. I didn't realize that a tap could frighten someone so much. The cab driver replied, Don't worry. It is not your fault. It is my first day as a cab driver today. I have been driving a funeral hearse for the past 25 years. An old English gentleman, a handsome young Frenchman, an old lady, and a beautiful young blonde are traveling in the same compartment of a train. The train passes through a tunnel, and the compartment is thrown into complete dark. A sound of kiss followed by a loud slap are heard. The old lady thinks to herself, I am sure the young Frenchman tried to kiss the blonde, and she must have slapped him. The blonde thinks to herself, looks like the Frenchman wanted to kiss me, but accidentally kissed the old lady, and she must have slapped him. The Frenchman thinks to himself, looks like the old Englishman kissed the young lady and she mistakenly slapped me. And the Englishman thinks to himself, that was fun. I kissed my own hand and slapped the smug Frenchman. Can't wait for the next tunnel to repeat this. A young investment banker decides to splurge on a Lamborghini Aventador. After paying close to $400,000 for his dream machine, he decides to take it out for a spin. He stops at a red light, and an old man on a mope pulls up next to him. The old man looks at the car and asks the banker, which car is this, young man? The banker replies, this is a Lamborghini Aventador. It cost me $400,000. The old man arches his eyebrows and says, that is a lot of money to pay for a car. Do you mind if I look inside? The new owner cheerfully replies, be my guest. The old man pokes his head into the car and admires its luxurious interiors. Just then, the light turns green and the young banker decides to show the old man what the Lamborghini can do. He floors the accelerator and was soon cruising at 200 miles per hour. Suddenly, he sees a small speck in the rear view mirror. Soon the speck catches up and zooms past the young banker. Surprised that something could go faster than him, he accelerates again. Up ahead, he sees it is the old man on the mope. He crosses the old man, but in less than 10 seconds, he sees him in the rear view gaining on him. This time, the mope plows into the back of the Lamborghini. The young banker jumps out, concerned that the old man might not have survived the crash. However, he is relieved to see the old man moving. The young banker runs up to him and says, is there anything I can do for you? The old man whispers, unhook my suspenders from your rear view mirror. A husband and wife are out to dinner. All of a sudden, a very attractive young lady comes up and kisses the husband on the cheek, winks, and walks away. Naturally, the wife is less than pleased about this. Who was that? She asks. That's Jessica, my mistress, he replies. As you can imagine, the wife is not happy to hear this, even less so about how upfront he's being about it. You pig, she says. You don't even have the decency to try and hide it. I'll be filing for divorce as soon as I can. Fine by me, if that's what you want, responds the husband. Just remember that we both signed a prenup, so you'll be on your own if you do. No more nice cars, Big houses or fancy restaurants? Well, as you can imagine, the wife is now quite upset. She's doing her best to look anywhere except at her husband, when she notices their neighbors a few tables over, when the same thing happens. A younger woman comes up and kisses the husband right in front of the wife. She asks her husband, "Who was that at Rob and Jill's table?" He looks over. "Oh, that's his mistress, Susie." And the wife replies, "Ours is prettier." A priest, a doctor, and an engineer were waiting one morning for a particularly slow group of golfers. The engineer fumed. "What's with those guys? We must have been waiting for 15 minutes. The doctor chimed in. "I don't know, but I've never seen such inept golf." The priest said, "Here comes the greenkeeper. Let's have a word with him." He said, "Hello, George. What's wrong with that group ahead of us? They're rather slow, aren't they?" The greenkeeper replied, "Oh, yes. That's a group of blind firemen. They lost their sight saving our clubhouse from a fire last year, so we always let them play for free anytime." The group fell silent for a moment. The priest said, "That's so sad. I think I will say a special prayer for them tonight." The doctor said, "Good idea. I'm going to contact my ophthalmologist colleague and see if there's anything he can do for them." The engineer said, "Why can't the buggers play at night? What do you call a really fat psychic?" A four-chin teller. A doctor, George Bush, a priest, and a Boy Scout were on a plane when it started having engine trouble. In spite of the best efforts of the pilot, the plane started to go down. Unfortunately, there were only 3 parachutes available. The doctor grabbed one and said, "I am a doctor. I save lives, so I deserve to live," and jumped out. Bush then said, "I am the president of USA, and I am the smartest man in the world, so I deserve to live," and jumped out. The priest looked at the boy and said, "My son, I have lived a long life, and you have a whole life to live, so you take the parachute." The Boy Scout handed the parachute back to the priest and said, "No worries, Father. The smartest man in the world just took off with my backpack." What's bloody and painful and happens once a month? Flossing. One day the king had to go for a year-long expedition and knew his queen was going to have sex with everyone through the county, so he turned to his court magistrate for help. The court magistrate showed the king a pair of metal panties with a hole in the middle. "Why, doesn't that just defeat the whole purpose?" asked the king, and the magistrate promptly picked a pencil off his desk and inserted it into the hole. Snap! The pencil had cleanly sliced into 2. "Anything that enters the hole will be sliced off, sire," said the magistrate. Thoroughly impressed, the king instructed the queen to wear it for the entire year and left for his expedition. Upon his return, the king called for a meeting of all his country folk. They were all instructed to drop their pants, and the king made his rounds noticing that many were missing fingers as well as their most vital part. Then, he saw the quiet knight Sir Xavier, fingers and all still intact. "Xavier, the one and only true knight. Only you among all the nobles have been true to me. What is it in my power to grant you? Name it and it is yours." But alas, Sir Xavier was speechless. "On Valentine's Day, I accidentally gave my girlfriend a glue stick instead of a chapstick. She is still not talking to me. I picked up a girl at the bar the other day. She took me back to her house where things got hot and heavy very quickly. I bent her over the kitchen table and started going at it when suddenly, we heard the front door open. 'Oh shit, it's my boyfriend,' she exclaimed. 'Quick, use the back door.' Now it's at about this time I probably should have left, but you just don't get an offer like that every day." Fred feared his wife Rhonda wasn't hearing as well as she used to, and he thought she might need a hearing aid. Not quite sure how to approach her, he called the family doctor to discuss the problem. The doctor told him there is a simple informal test the husband could perform to give the doctor a better idea about her hearing loss. "Here's what you do," said the doctor. "Stand about 40 feet away from her, and in a normal conversational speaking tone, see if she hears you. If not, go to 30 feet, then 20 feet, and so on until you get a response." That evening, the wife is in the kitchen cooking dinner, and he was in the den. He says to himself, "I'm about 40 feet away, let's see what happens." Then in a normal tone he asks, "Honey, what's for dinner?" No response. So the husband moves closer to the kitchen, about 30 feet from his wife, and repeats, "Rhonda, what's for dinner?" Still no response. Next he moves into the dining room, where he is about 20 feet from his wife, and asks, "Honey, what's for dinner?" Again, he gets no response. So, he walks up to the kitchen door, about 10 feet away. "Honey, what's for dinner?" Again, there is no response. So he walks right up behind her. "Rhonda, what's for dinner?" "Damn it, Fred, for the 5th time, it is chicken." An old lady wants to spice her sex life. So she buys red leather boots, a blue spandex jumpsuit, and a cape. That night she runs into her bedroom and yells to her husband, "Super pussy." The husband says, "I'll take the soup." A physicist, an engineer, and a statistician go on a hunting trip. They are walking through the woods when they spot a deer in a clearing. The physicist calculates the distance of the target, the velocity and drop of the bullet, adjusts his rifle and fires, missing the deer 5 feet to the left. The engineer rolls his eyes. "You forgot to account for wind. Give it here." He snatches the rifle, licks his finger, and estimates the speed and direction of the wind and fires, missing the deer 5 feet to the right. Suddenly, the statistician claps his hands and yells, "We got him!" A gay guy walks into a bar and he sees a black guy sitting there. The gay guy has a couple drinks and is interested in the black guy. So he works up his courage and goes over and whispers to the black guy, "Can I give you a blowjob?" The black guy goes ballistic and beats the hell out of the gay guy. The gay guy leaves and the black guy sits back down. The bartender asks the black guy, "What the hell did that guy say to you to make you react like that?" The black guy says, "I didn't get the full context, but it was something about giving me a job." Why do sumo wrestlers shave their legs? So people don't confuse them with feminists. My father-in-law said, "Your generation relies too much on technology." I unplugged his life support system and said, "No, your generation relies too much on technology." A married man is having an affair with his secretary. One day, their passions overcame them and they took off for her house. Exhausted from the afternoon's activities, they fell asleep and awoke at around 8 p.m. As the man threw on his clothes, he told the woman to take his shoes outside and rub them through the grass and dirt. Mystified, she nonetheless complied and he slipped into his shoes and drove home. "Where have you been?" demanded his wife when he entered the house. "Darling," replied the man, "I can't lie to you. I've been having an affair with my secretary. I fell asleep in her bed and didn't wake up until 8 o'clock. The wife glanced down at his shoes and said, "You liar! You've been playing golf again? Why do jihadist Muslims only drink instant coffee?" Because they hate the French press. A few months after his parents were divorced, little Johnny passed by his mom's bedroom and saw her rubbing herself and moaning, "God, I need a man. I need a man." Next day, he came home from school and heard her moaning differently. When he peeked into her bedroom, he saw a man on top of her. Little Johnny ran into his room, took off his clothes, threw himself on his bed, and started stroking himself, moaning, "God, I need a bike. I need a bike. 12 priests were about to be ordained. The final test was for them to line up nude in a garden while a model danced sexily before them. Each priest had a small bell attached to his privates, and if anyone's bell rang, they would not be ordained as he had not reached a state of purity. The model danced before the first priest candidate with no reaction. She proceeded down the line with the same response until she got to the final priest. As she danced, his bell rang so loudly it fell off and clattered to the ground. Embarrassed, he bent down to pick up the bell, and all the other bells went off. My wife is really weird. She always starts conversations with, "Are you even listening to me?" A family is driving along the highway when all of a sudden someone throws a dildo out of their window. The dildo lands with a bang on the family's windshield, and everyone gets a big fright. With horror in their eyes, the parents stare at each other, and the father turns on the wipers, but it's too late and their son asks, "Dad, what was that?" He thinks on his feet and answers, "It was just a big insect, son," thinking that they would avoid an awkward conversation. The son, still puzzled, answers, "Damn. Did you see the dick on that insect?" A badly beaten man in coma is brought to a hospital. When he wakes up, the doctor asks him what happened. He replies, "All I remember is getting on an elevator with a gorgeous woman and her husband. She had a beautiful cleavage, and I couldn't stop staring at it. She then looked at me and told me, 'Can you please press one?'" A lady walks into a pet store. She sees a beautiful parrot with a sign on its cage, $10 only. The lady asks the pet shop owner, "Why so cheap?" The owner says, "This bird used to live in a brothel, so he says a lot of inappropriate things." The lady can't pass up the deal and decides to get the bird anyway. She gets the bird home, and the first thing the bird says is, "Finally cleaned up this dump, and the new madam isn't bad looking." The lady finds it amusing. Her 2 teen daughters get home, and the bird says, "New whores in the house. Business will be booming tonight." The girls are shocked but laugh it off. A few hours later, the woman's husband gets home and the bird says, "Hey Jim." A man phoned his wife from the office, "Honey, I have the chance to go fishing for a week. It's the opportunity of a lifetime, but I have to leave right away. Pack my clothes, my fishing equipment, and especially my blue silk pajamas. I'll be home soon to pick them up." He rushed home to pick up his things, hugged his wife, apologized for giving her such short notice, and hurried off. When he returned a week later, his wife asked, "Well, dear, did you have a good fishing trip?" "I sure did," he replied. "The fishing was great, but you forgot to pack my blue silk pajamas." "No, dear, I didn't," the wife replied with a sly smile. "I put them in your tackle box." If a stork brings white babies and a blackbird black babies, what bird brings no babies? A swallow. A male patient is lying in bed in the hospital, wearing an oxygen mask over his mouth and nose. A young student nurse appears and gives him a partial sponge bath. "Nurse," he mumbles from behind the mask, "are my testicles black?" Embarrassed, the young nurse replies, "I don't know, sir. I'm only here to wash your upper body and feet." He struggles to ask again, "Nurse, please check for me. Are my testicles black?" Concerned that he might elevate his blood pressure and heart rate from worrying about his testicles, she overcomes her embarrassment and pulls back the covers. She raises his gown, holds his manhood in one hand and his testicles in the other. She looks very closely and says, "There's nothing wrong with them, sir. They look fine." The man slowly pulls off his oxygen mask, smiles at her, and says very slowly, "Thank you very much. That was wonderful. Now listen very, very closely. Are my test results back?" A Marine boarded a train on his way home from deployment. The train was quite crowded, and the Marine walked the entire length looking for a seat. There seemed to be one next to a well-dressed middle-aged French woman, but when he got there, he saw it was taken by the woman's poodle. The war-weary Marine asked, "Ma'am, may I have that seat?" The French woman sniffed and said to no one in particular, "Americans are so rude. My little Fifi is using that seat." The Marine walked the entire train again, but the only seat available was under that dog. "Please, ma'am, may I sit down? I'm very tired." She snorted. "Not only are you Americans rude, you are also arrogant." This time the Marine didn't say a word. He just picked up the little dog, tossed it out the train window and sat down. The woman shrieked, "Someone must defend my honor. Put this American in his place." An English gentleman sitting nearby spoke up. "Sir, you Americans seem to have a penchant for doing the wrong thing. You hold the fork in the wrong hand. You drive your autos on the wrong side of the road. And now, sir, you seem to have thrown the wrong bitch out the window." An old woman calls the police complaining of a man indecently exposing himself. When the police arrive, she takes them to her bathroom and points out the window and says, "See? See that man exposing himself to an old lady?" The cops look out the window and see a guy shaving in his bathroom from the shoulders up. The cop says, "Lady, that's not indecent." She says, "No, stand up on the toilet seat and then look. My girlfriend is a porn star. She is gonna get really mad when she finds out." A fight breaks out at an Irish wedding. Chairs are flying and women are crying. The police show up and arrest all the men involved in the scuffle. They are all brought to the courthouse and the judge asks, "Can someone come up and please explain what happened?" Jimmy speaks up. "Well, you sees, Judge, at an Irish wedding it's tradition for the first mate have a dance with the bride. So I got up there and I'm dancing with the bride. She was grinding up on me, you see, and Tommy didn't take too kindly to that. So Tommy walks up and kicks her right in the pussy." "Right in the pussy?" The judge cringes as he says, "That must have hurt." Jimmy says, "Hurt? Broke 3 of my fingers." A retired Army Master Sergeant was sitting by himself at a bar when a beautiful blonde bombshell comes in the room. She noticed the old Master Sergeant right away. She finds him rugged and handsome and sits down next to him. "May I buy you a drink?" she asks him. He obliges. She's obviously interested in him. The blonde says to him, "So tell me what you do. You seem to be in great shape for a man your age." "I'm a retired Army Master Sergeant. I don't do much anymore, besides sit at his here bar every night." She notices he isn't wearing a ring. "Are you not married?" she asks. "Never have been. Spent most of my life overseas in combat. The Army was my wife until I left her." At this point, they hit it off. They strike up great conversation and continue buying each other drinks. The blonde's inhibitions have obviously lowered at this point, and without hesitation, she asks him another question. "So tell me, Master Sergeant, how long has it been since you've been laid?" He takes a long pause and stares in the distance in deep thought. He then says, 1955. The blonde is shocked. 1955. You have some catching up to do. You and me, in my car, right now. They hopped in her back seat and commenced to the roughest sex she has ever had. She has orgasm after orgasm. She couldn't believe his sexual prowess. She catches her breath after they finish. She's never had it so good before. Completely amazed, she says to him, "Master Sergeant, you definitely have not lost your touch since 1955. You were amazing." He takes a look down at his watch and says, "I sure hope like hell I haven't. It's only 2,330 now." A young man named Chuck bought a horse from a farmer for $250. The farmer agreed to deliver the horse the next day. The next day, the farmer drove up to Chuck's house and said, "Sorry, son, but I have some bad news. The horse died." Chuck replied, "Well, then just give me my money back." The farmer said, "Can't do that. I have already spent it." Chuck said, "Okay, then, just bring me the dead horse." The farmer asked, "What you gonna do with him?" Chuck said, "I'm going to raffle him off." The farmer said, "You can't raffle off a dead horse." Chuck said, "Sure I can. I just won't tell anybody he's dead." A month later, the farmer met up with Chuck and asked, "What happened with that dead horse?" Chuck said, "I raffled him off. I sold 500 tickets at $5 apiece and made a profit of $2,495. The farmer said, "Didn't anyone complain?" Chuck said, "Just the guy who won. So I gave him his $5 back." The sixth grade science teacher, Mrs. Parks, asked her class, "Which human body part increases to 10 times its size when stimulated?" No one answered until little Mary stood up and said, "You should not be asking sixth graders a question like that. I'm going to tell my parents, and they will go and tell the principal, who will then fire you." Mrs. Parks ignored her and asked the question again. Which body part increases to 10 times its size when stimulated? Little Mary's mouth fell open. Then she said to those around her, "Boy, is she going to get in big trouble?" The teacher continued to ignore her and said to the class, "Anybody?" Finally, Billy stood up, looked around nervously, and said, "The body part that increases 10 times its size when stimulated is the pupil of the eye." Mrs. Parks said, "Very good, Billy," then turned to Mary and continued, "As for you, young lady, I have 3 things to say. 1. You have a dirty mind. 2. You didn't read your homework. And 3. One day you are going to be very, very disappointed." A young man moved into a new apartment on his own and went to the lobby to put his name on his mailbox. While there, an attractive young lady came out of the apartment next to the mailboxes wearing a robe. The boy smiled at the young woman, and she started a conversation with him. As they talked, her robe slipped open, and it was obvious that she had nothing else on. The poor kid broke into a sweat trying to maintain eye contact. After a few minutes, she placed her hand on his arm and said, "Let's go to my apartment. I hear someone coming." He followed her into her apartment. She closed the door and leaned against it, allowing her robe to fall off completely. Now nude, she purred at him. "What would you say is my best feature?" Flustered and embarrassed, he finally squeaked, "It's got to be your ears." Astounded and a little hurt, she asked, "My ears? Look at these breasts. They are full and 100% natural. I work out every day. My butt is firm and solid. Look at my skin, no blemishes anywhere. How can you think that the best part of my body is my ears?" Clearing his throat, he stammered, "Outside, when you said you heard someone coming. That was me. My lesbian neighbors asked me what I wanted for my birthday. They gave me a Rolex. I think they misunderstood when I said I want a watch. A husband takes his wife to play her first game of golf. Of course, the wife promptly hacked her first shot right through the window of the biggest house adjacent to the course. The husband cringed. I warned you to be careful. Now we'll have to go up there, find the owner, apologize, and see how much your lousy drive is going to cost us." So the couple walked up to the house and knocked on the door. A warm voice said, "Come on in." When they opened the door, they saw the damage that was done. Glass was all over the place, and a broken antique bottle was lying on its side near the pieces of window glass. A man reclining on the couch asked, "Are you the people that broke my window?" Yeah, sir. We're sure sorry about that," the husband replied. Oh, no apology is necessary. Actually, I want to thank you. You see, I'm a genie, and I've been trapped in that bottle for 1,000 years. Now that you've released me, I'm allowed to grant 3 wishes. I'll give you each one wish, but if you don't mind, I'll keep the last one for myself. Wow, that's great, the husband said. He pondered a moment and blurted out, I'd like $1 million a year for the rest of my life. No problem, said the genie. You've got it. It's the least I can do. And I'll guarantee you a long, healthy life. And now you, young lady, what do you want? The genie asked. I'd like to own a gorgeous home in every country in the world complete with servants, she said. Consider it done, the genie said. And your homes will always be safe from fire, burglary, and natural disasters. And now, the couple asked in unison, what's your wish, genie? Well, since I've been trapped in that bottle, and haven't been with a woman in more than 1,000 years, my wish is to have sex with your wife. The husband looked at his wife and said, Gee, honey, you know we both now have a fortune, and all those houses. What do you think? She mulled it over for a few moments and said, You know, you're right. Considering our good fortune, I guess I wouldn't mind, but what about you, honey? You know I love you, sweetheart, said the husband. I'd do the same for you. So the genie and the woman went upstairs where they spent the rest of the afternoon enjoying each other. The genie was insatiable. After about 3 hours of nonstop sex, the genie rolled over and looked directly into her eyes and asked, How old are you and your husband? Why, we're both 35, she responded breathlessly. No kidding, he said. 35 years old and you both still believe in genies? A young cowboy walks into a saloon. He sits at the counter and notices an old cowboy with his arms folded, staring blankly at a full bowl of chicken congee. After 15 minutes of just sitting there staring at it, the young cowboy bravely asked the old cowboy, If you ain't gonna eat that, mind if I do? The older cowboy slowly turns his head toward the young wrangler and in his best cowboy manner says, Nah, go ahead. Eagerly, the young cowboy reaches over and slides the bowl over to his place and starts spooning in it with delight. He gets nearly down to the bottom and notices a dead mouse. The sight was shocking, and he immediately barfs up the congee back into the bowl. The old cowboy quietly says, Yep, that's as far as I got too. A young woman in New York was so depressed that she decided to end her life by throwing herself into the ocean. She went down to the docks and was about to leap into the frigid water when a handsome young sailor saw her tottering on the edge of the pier, crying. He took pity on her and said, Look, you have so much to live for. I'm off to Europe in the morning, and if you like, I can stow you away on my ship. I'll take good care of you and bring you food every day. Moving closer, he slipped his arm around her shoulder and added, I'll keep you happy, and you'll keep me happy. The girl nodded yes. After all, what did she have to lose? Perhaps a fresh start in Europe would give her life new meaning. That night, the sailor brought her aboard and hid her in a lifeboat. From then on, every night he brought her 3 sandwiches and a piece of fruit, and they made passionate love until dawn. 3 weeks later, during a routine inspection, she was discovered by the captain. What are you doing here? The captain asked. I have an arrangement with one of the sailors, she explained. I get food and a trip to Europe, and he's screwing me. He certainly is, the captain said. This is the Staten Island ferry. John is being shown around the office by his new boss. They enter the IT department, and John sees a man using 2 keyboards at once. That's incredible, says John. Trust a geek to use 2 keyboards at once. Hey, replied his boss. That's stereotyping. Three men find themselves at a beachside resort in the Caribbean, and they soon begin to discuss their lives and how they came to be there. The first man says, I used to run a successful business in the Midwest. One day, unfortunately, there was a huge fire and my entire warehouse burned to the ground. I collected the insurance on it and decided to move here. The other two nod, slightly sympathetically. The second man says, similar story here. I used to run a jewelry store back in LA, but unfortunately one night there was a massive break-in. I collected the insurance that I had on the jewelry and moved down here to settle. They look at the third guy. He says, I used to run a small fishing business on the East Coast. Last year, unfortunately, the entire thing was ruined by a hurricane. I collected my insurance and moved here. The first two guys look at each other for a minute. Finally, one says, how do you start a hurricane? What do you call an immigrants to Sweden? Artificial sweetener. The old man in his deathbed looks his wife in the eye. Honey, please be honest with me. I'm not long for this world, and something has really been eating at me for a while. I've always found our sixth son a bit weird. Different, if you may. He has a different father from the other ones, hasn't he? The wife, in tears and sobbing uncontrollably, asks for forgiveness and buries her face in her hands, while nodding. The husband, curious, so, who's the father? The wife, very sincerely answers, it's you. A train hits a bus filled with Catholic schoolgirls and they all perish. They are in heaven trying to enter the pearly gates when St. Peter asks the first girl, Tiffany, have you ever had any contact with a male organ? She giggles and shyly replies, well, I once touched the head of one with the tip of my finger. St. Peter says, okay, dip the tip of your finger in the holy water and pass through the gate. St. Peter asks the next girl the same question. Jennifer, have you ever had any contact with a male organ? The girl is a little reluctant but replies, well, once I fondled and stroked one. St. Peter says, okay, dip your whole hand in the holy water and pass through the gate. All of a sudden, there is a lot of commotion in the line of girls. One girl is pushing her way to the front of the line. When she reaches the front, St. Peter says, Reva, what seems to be the rush? The girl replies, if I'm going to have to gargle that holy water, I want to do it before Jessica sticks her ass in it. A husband and his wife are lying in bed, reminiscing about their love life. The woman asks, what did you think of my body the day you first saw me naked, 35 years ago? I wanted to fuck your brains out and suck your tits dry. And what do you think of my body now? Uttered the woman, as she undid her robe. I think I did a pretty good job. An engineer who was unemployed for a long time decided to open a medical clinic. He puts a sign outside the clinic, a cure for your ailment guaranteed at $500. We'll pay you $1,000 if we fail. A doctor thinks this is a good opportunity to earn $1,000 and goes to his clinic. Doctor, I have lost my sense of taste. Engineer, nurse, please bring the medicine from box 22 and put 3 drops in the patient's mouth. Doctor, this is gasoline. Engineer, congratulations, you've got your taste back. That will be $500. The doctor gets annoyed and goes back after a couple of days later to recover his money. Doctor, I have lost my memory, I cannot remember anything. Engineer, nurse, please bring the medicine from box 22 and put 3 drops in the patient's mouth. Doctor, but that is gasoline. Engineer, congratulations, you've got your memory back. That will be $500. The doctor leaves angrily and comes back after several days, more determined than ever to make his money back. Doctor, my eyesight has become weak. Engineer, well, I don't have any medicine for this. Take this $1,000, passing the doctor a $500 note. Doctor, but this is $500. Engineer, congratulations, you've got your vision back. That will be $500. Bill worked in a pickle factory. He had been employed there for a number of years when he came home one day to confess to his wife that he had a terrible compulsion. He had an urge to stick his penis in the pickle slicer. His wife suggested that he should see a therapist to talk about it, but Bill indicated that he'd be too embarrassed. He vowed to overcome the compulsion on his own. One day, a few weeks later, Bill came home absolutely ashen. His wife could see at once that something was seriously wrong. "What's wrong, Bill?" she asked. "Do you remember that I told you how I had this tremendous urge to put my penis in the pickle slicer?" "Oh, Bill, you didn't." "Yes, I did." "My God, Bill, what happened?" "I got fired." "No, Bill. I mean, what happened with the pickle slicer?" "Oh, she got fired too." A brunette goes into a doctor's office and says that her body hurts wherever she touches it. "Impossible," says the doctor. "Show me." She takes her finger, presses on her elbow, and screams in agony. She pushes her knee and screams, pushes her ankle and screams, and so it goes on. Everywhere she touches makes her scream with pain. The doctor says, "You're not really a brunette, are you?" She replies, "No, I dyed my hair. I'm naturally blonde." "I thought so," he says. "Your finger is broken." A sadist, a masochist, a murderer, a zoophile, and a pyromaniac are all sitting on a bench in a mental institution. "Let's have sex with a cat," says the zoophile. "Let's have sex with a cat and then torture it," says the sadist. "Let's have sex with a cat, torture it and then kill it," shouted the murderer. "Let's have sex with a cat, torture it, kill it, and then have sex with it again," said the necrophile. "Let's have sex with a cat, torture it, kill it, have sex with it again, and then burn it," said the pyromaniac. There was silence, and then the masochist said, "Meow." "It's impossible," said pride. "It's risky," said experience. "It's pointless," said reason. "Give it a try," whispered heart. "What the hell is that?" screamed the asshole. A lawyer gets home after a long trial in which it was decided his client, Mr. Wright, would be hanged later that night. He is greeted at the door by his wife. "You're home late, and you're tracking mud all over the place. For God's sake, take off your shoes." "Look, I've had a hard day at work. Can you just leave me alone?" he says. After some mumbling from his wife, the lawyer walks upstairs to take a bath. A while later, the phone rings, and the wife answers to be greeted by her husband's boss, who explains that due to the appearance of new evidence, Mr. Wright isn't going to be hanged that night. Realizing what a hard day her husband must have had, she goes upstairs to tell her husband the news. She opens the bathroom door to see her husband bending over drying his feet, balls dangling between his legs. At this point, she says, "They're not hanging Wright tonight." "God damn it, woman. Can you just stop criticizing me for 1 minute?" 3 grumpy old men are sitting on a park bench. The first old man says, "Oh, I hate getting old. It's so bad that I can't take a good healthy piss anymore." Second old man nods. "You ain't lying. Getting old sucks. Just once, I wish I could take a big healthy shit like I used to when I was a young man." Third old man nods. "Well, fellas, I gotta say, every morning, regular as clockwork, I take a nice, long piss at 6 o'clock. And every morning, regular like clockwork, I take a really big healthy shit at 7 o'clock." The other two look at him incredulously. So what is your problem? They ask. The third shrugs and says, I wake up at 8 o'clock. An octopus walks into a bar and sees a band consisting of an Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman. He walks up and says, I'm the best musician in the world. I can play any instrument you like. So the English guy goes, all right then. Play this, and hands him a guitar. The octopus plays it better than Jimi Hendrix, better than Chuck Berry, better than anyone, and hands him back the guitar. The Irishman says, okay, how about this? And shows him to the piano. The octopus sits down and plays it like never before, better than Jerry Lee Lewis and Elton John. The best pianist ever. Finally, a Scotsman says, all right, let's see you play this then, and hands him a set of bagpipes. The octopus looks at them and fumbles with them. Couple more minutes and he's still struggling and there's no sound coming out. Couple more minutes and still nothing, so the Scotsman says, oh, so can you not play it then? And the octopus says, play it? I'm gonna screw her when I get her pajamas off. So a man walks into a bar and says to the bartender, hey, will you give me a free beer if I show you something amazing you've never seen before? The bartender says, sure, but it'd better be good. The man reaches into his coat pocket and pulls out a hamster. He sets the hamster down on the bar, and the hamster runs along the bar, jumps off the end, turns a somersault in midair, and lands on the piano. He proceeds to play the piano beautifully. The bartender says, wow, that was incredible. Have a beer. The man finishes his beer and says to the bartender, hey, if I show you something else amazing that you've never seen before, will you give me another free beer? If it's as amazing as the hamster, sure, the bartender replies. So the man reaches back into his coat pocket and pulls out a frog. He sets the frog down on the bar, and the frog begins to sing beautifully. The bartender is again amazed and gets the man another beer. As the man is drinking his beer, another man rushes over and says, holy shit, a singing frog. I'll give you $200 for that frog. The first man agrees to the deal and sells him the frog. The bartender walks over and says, not that it's my business, but that was a singing frog, for heaven's sake. Why would you sell it for only $200? You could have made millions off of it. The man says, nah, don't worry. The hamster's also a ventriloquist. Guy walks into a bar with his pet monkey. The pet monkey starts running about and eating everything he gets his hands on. He grabs a cherry and eats it, he grabs a lemon wedge and eats it, then he grabs a handful of peanuts and eats them. The bartender says, sir, you need to control your monkey or you two are out of here. The man says, sorry, I'll pay for all that stuff, just put it on my tab. Next thing you know, the monkey runs down to the pool table and grabs a piece of chalk and eats it, and then grabs a cue ball and swallows it whole. The bartender shouts at the man with the monkey and says, that's it, y'all are out of here. The man apologizes and pays for the damages done by his monkey and they leave. A few weeks go by and the man with his pet monkey come back into the bar. They both sit down and the bartender tells the man that he'd better keep his monkey under control. The monkey goes apeshit again and grabs a cherry. He then sticks it up his ass, pulls it out and eats it. The monkey next grabs a lemon wedge, sticks it up his ass, pulls it out and eats it. The bartender enraged says, what in the hell is he doing this time? The man replies, ever since he swallowed that cue ball, he's been taking measurements. A pirate walks into a bar with a ship's steering wheel attached to the front of his pants. The bartender says, you know you got a ship's steering wheel stuck to the front of your pants? The pirate says, it's driving me nuts. A man walks into a bar and says, I'm gonna shoot the bastard that fucked my wife. The bar went dead silent. Then, a voice from back said, "You don't have enough bullets, mate." A white woman meets a handsome black man at a bar and decides to let him go home with her. At the door, she reaches into his pants and whispers seductively, "Show me what they say about black men is true." So he stabs her and steals her purse. Two hunters are out in the woods when one of them collapses. He doesn't seem to be breathing and his eyes are glazed. The other guy whips out his phone and calls the emergency services. He gasps, "My friend is dead. What can I do?" The operator says, "Calm down. I can help. First, let's make sure he's dead." There is a silence. Then a gunshot is heard. Back on the phone, the guy says, "Okay, now what?" After many abusive relationships, a woman was coming to the end of her rope when she decided to put an ad in the paper as a last-ditch effort at finding Mr. Right. After hours of interviewing candidates, the sun started to go down and she had pretty much lost all hope when she heard the doorbell ring. She opened the door and looked around and saw no one. She was going to close the door when she heard, "Down here." She looked down and saw a man with no arms or legs. She explained that her previous relationships had been with men who were terrible in bed, beat her, then left her. "Well, I have no arms, so I can't beat you, and I have no legs, so I can't leave you." So she asked him, "Are you good in bed?" To which he replied, "How do you think I rang the doorbell?" A businessman was getting ready to go on a long business trip. He knew his wife was a flirtatious sort with an extremely healthy sex drive, so he thought he'd better buy her a little something to keep her occupied while he was gone. He went to a store that sold sex toys and started looking around for something special to please his wife, and started talking to the old man behind the counter. He explained his situation. The old man said, "Well, we have vibrating dildos, special attachments, and so on, but I don't know of anything that will keep her occupied for weeks, except," and he stopped. "Except what?" the man asked. "Nothing, nothing." "Come on, tell me. I need something." "Well, sir, I don't usually mention this, but there is the voodoo penis." "So what's up with this voodoo penis?" he asked. The old man reached under the counter and pulled out a very old wooden box, carved with strange symbols and erotic images. He opened it, and there lay an ordinary-looking dildo. The businessman laughed and said, "Big damn deal. It looks like every other dildo in this shop." The old man replied, "But you haven't seen what it'll do yet." He pointed to a door and said, "Voodoo penis, the door." The voodoo penis miraculously rose out of its box, darted over to the door, and started pounding the keyhole. The whole door shook wildly with the vibrations, so much so that a crack began to form down the middle. Before the door split, the old man said, "Voodoo penis, return to box." The voodoo penis stopped, levitated back to the box, and lay there quiet once more. "I'll take it," said the businessman. The guy took it home to his wife, told her it was a special dildo, and that to use it, all she had to do was say, "Voodoo penis, my crotch." After he'd been gone a few days, the wife was unbearably horny and remembered the voodoo penis. She undressed, opened the box, and said, "Voodoo penis, my crotch." The voodoo penis shot to her crotch and started pumping. It was absolutely incredible, like nothing she'd ever experienced before. After 3 mind-shattering orgasms, she became very exhausted and decided she'd had enough. She tried to pull it out, but it was stuck in her, still thrusting. She tried and tried to get it out, but nothing worked. Her husband had forgotten to tell her how to shut it off. Worried, she decided to go to the hospital to see if they could help. She put her clothes on, got in the car, and started to drive, quivering with every thrust of the dildo. On the way, another incredibly intense orgasm made her swerve all over the road. A police officer saw this and immediately pulled her over. He asked for her license, and then asked how much she'd had to drink. Gasping and twitching, she explained, "I haven't had anything to drink, officer. You see, I've got this voodoo penis thing stuck in my crotch, and it won't stop screwing me." The officer looked at her for a second, shook his head, and in an arrogant voice replied, "Yeah, right. Voodoo penis, my ass." A guy buys a vintage motorcycle he saw for sale in an ad in the paper. When he goes to pick the bike up, the dude who sells him the bike says, "Now remember, that's all original leather. You can't let it get too wet. If it starts raining and you don't have anywhere to shelter it, make sure you keep a tub of Vaseline with you. Rub it all over the seat so the water will just bead off." The guy takes his new bike and goes to pick up his girlfriend. The girlfriend invites the guy over to her parents' house for dinner. This will be the first time he's ever eaten with her family. "I should let you know the rule of the table," she said. "There is no talking allowed. The first person to talk at the table has to clean the dishes." The guy doesn't think this is that big of a deal until he arrives at the family's house and looks in the kitchen. There must be at least 3 months' worth of dishes inside. They are stacked up to the ceiling, stinking and rotting of mold and old bits of food everywhere. The guy almost throws up at the smell and sight of such a disgusting state of affairs. Dinner begins, and no one is saying a word. The tension is starting to get to the boyfriend, so he concocts a plan to make someone else speak first. The guy drops his fork, goes over to his girlfriend at the table, throws her up on top, and just starts screwing her in front of everyone. The father and mother are obviously mortified. But even with their jaws on the floor, no one says a word. The guy stops and thinks to himself, "This is going to be harder than I thought." Then he gets another idea. Without hesitation, he runs over to the mother, throws her up on the table and screws her, right in front of the father. The dad is staring daggers through the boyfriend and turning bright red in anger, but still says nothing. The girlfriend is becoming teary-eyed and covering her mouth with her hands, but doesn't make a peep. The boyfriend stops screwing the mother and sits back down at his seat, completely flustered. He takes a gander out the window and notices a sudden heavy rain has settled in. He then realizes that his vintage motorbike is parked on the street, uncovered. The boyfriend pops out of his seat and grabs his tub of Vaseline. The dad jumps out of his chair and yells out, "All right, I'll do the goddamn dishes." Joe has a broken leg. His friend Mike comes over to his house. Joe says, "Do you mind getting my slippers?" Mike goes upstairs and sees Joe's hot 18-year-old twin sisters. Mike tells them that Joe sent me up here have sex with both of you. One of them says, "Prove it." Mike shouts downstairs and says, "Both of them." Joe yells back and says, "What's the point of fucking one?" Two guys chatting in the bar, and one asked his friend, "How did that date go with that girl the other night?" "Well," he replied, "you know I get a boner every time I see her?" "Yes?" To prevent an embarrassing situation during the date, I had an idea to duct tape my dick to my leg. So I turn up to her house. She opens the door and she's wearing this really sexy dress. Then what happened? I kicked her in the face. An 18-year-old girl tells her mother that she has missed her period for 2 months. Very worried, the mother goes to the drugstore and buys a pregnancy kit. The test result shows that the girl is pregnant. Shouting, cursing, crying, the mother says, "Who was the pig that did this to you? I want to know." The girl picks up the phone and makes a call. Half an hour later, an AMG Mercedes stops in front of their house. A mature and distinguished man, with gray hair and impeccably dressed in an Armani suit, steps out of the Mercedes and enters the house. He sits in the living room with the father, mother, and the girl, and tells them, "Good morning. Your daughter has informed me of the situation. I can't marry her because of my personal family situation, but I'll take responsibility for my actions. I will pay all costs and provide for your daughter for the rest of her life. Additionally, if a girl is born, I will bequeath her 2 retail stores, a townhouse, a beachfront villa, and a $2 million bank account. If a boy is born, my legacy will be a couple of factories and a $4 million bank account. If twins, they will each receive a factory and $2 million. Finally, for causing such social embarrassment and distress to you both, I would like to offer $1 million in compensation, my private yacht, and Gold Coast penthouse to be at your disposal at any time. However, if there is a miscarriage, what do you suggest I do?" At this point, the father, who had remained silent the entire time, places a hand firmly on the man's shoulder and tells him, "You fuck her again. What's the difference between a circus and a strip club? A circus has many cunning stunts. What's the difference between a tribe of clever pygmies and a girls' track team? The pygmies are a bunch of cunning runts. Superman's horny as hell, and he's flying around Metropolis, and he spots Wonder Woman sunbathing on the roof naked with her legs spread wide open. Superman figures that he can swoop down and fuck Wonder Woman without her even realizing it because he's Superman, right? He's faster than a speeding bullet. So he swoops down and fucks her, and he's gone in a flash. Wonder Woman gets up and says, 'What the hell was that?' And the Invisible Man says, 'I don't know, but my ass is killing me.' A husband and wife are about to get freaky and do the nasty. She gets down on her knees and proceeds to give her husband a blowjob when her husband eagerly asks, 'Baby, can I come in your ear?' The wife looks up horrified and says, 'God, no. You can't come in my ear. I'll go deaf.' The husband scoffs and retorts, 'I know that is a fucking lie. I come in your mouth all the time, and you never shut the fuck up.' How many police officers does it take to change a light bulb? They don't. They just beat the shit out of the bulb for being broke and arrest the room for being dark. Little Susie was not the best student in Catholic school. Usually she slept through the class. One day her teacher, a nun, called on her while she was sleeping. 'Tell me, Susie, who created the universe?' When Susie didn't stir, little Johnny, who was her friend sitting behind her, took his pencil and jabbed her in the rear. 'God Almighty!' shouted Susie. The nun said, 'Very good,' and continued teaching her class. A little later the nun asked Susie, 'Who is our Lord and Savior?' But Susie didn't stir from her slumber. Once again, Johnny came to her rescue and stuck her in the butt. 'Jesus Christ!' shouted Susie. And the nun once again said, 'Very good,' and Susie fell back asleep. The nun asked her a third question. What did Eve say to Adam after she had her 23rd child? Again, Johnny did his thing. This time Susie jumped up and shouted, 'If you stick that damn thing in me one more time, I'll break it in half.' 2 nuns are biking down the cobblestone streets of Rome. 'I've never come this way before,' one of the nuns says, quite breathlessly. The other responds, 'It's the cobblestones.' Mickey called the police because someone had written, 'Mickey sucks' in urine in the snow in front of Mickey's house. The officer told Mickey, 'I've got some good news and I have some bad news.' 'What's the good news?' Mickey asked. 'The good news is that we were able to identify whose urine it was. It was Goofy's.' 'How could the bad news be worse than that?' 'It was Minnie's handwriting.' Guy walks into a bar looking distraught and orders 3 shots. After taking them in quick succession, the bartender asks, 'Hey buddy, Bad day? Man replies, my brother just left his wife and kids for the pool boy. A couple weeks later, same guy walks in and orders 5 shots. He takes them as quickly as the 3 and the bartender says, what is it this time? Guy replies, my dad just left my mom to run away with a male flight attendant. A couple weeks after that, the guy comes in and orders 10 shots. Bartender says, man, is there anyone in your family that likes women? After sucking down the 10th shot, the man slurs, yeah, apparently my wife does. 2 nuns walk into a bar. They're having a quiet drink when the devil walks over and says to one of them, ever been with a man? Graciously, one of them asks him to please leave them be. 5 minutes later, he tries his luck again. Are you both virgins? The nuns are incredibly embarrassed by this, but one simply says, that is inappropriate. We just want a quiet drink, please. Again, 5 minutes later, the devil comes walking back over. The second nun says to the first, show him your cross. So the first nun turns to the devil and yells, fuck off. A guy walks into a bar and sits down at the piano and starts playing beautiful music. The bar owner hears him from his office and goes out to greet him. The bar owner says, sir, that is the best piano playing I've heard in my life. I want you to come back and play later on tonight. The man says, thanks, I wrote it myself. The song is called Sucking Those Big Titties. He then switches tunes and says, this one is called Fucking You All Night Long. Shocked, the bar owner replies, you can only play if you don't say the names of the songs. Dejected, the man replies, okay, but only if I get free beer. The bar owner agrees, they shake hands and the man leaves to come back later that night. He returns during happy hour and starts to play. After each song, the bar crowd would cheer and he would get his free beer. After playing for a while and getting thoroughly drunk, the man stumbles off to the bathroom and to take a piss. He then returns to the piano to see that his crowd was silent. A lone voice in the distance shouts out, hey, do you know your fly is open and your dick is hanging out? The man turns towards the voice and says, know it? Man, I wrote it. 3 men were in the pub deciding what they were going to buy for their wives for Christmas. The first man said, I'm going to buy my wife a necklace and a scarf. That way, if she doesn't like the necklace, she can wear the scarf on top and she won't be embarrassed. I won't be embarrassed, and we'll have a happy Christmas. The next man said, I'm going to buy my wife a bracelet and some long gloves. That way, if she doesn't like the bracelet, she can wear the gloves on top and she won't be embarrassed. I won't be embarrassed, and we'll have a happy Christmas. Finally, they asked the third man what he was going to buy. Well, I'm going to buy my wife a bright red hat and a vibrator, said the third man. If she doesn't like the hat, she can go fuck herself. 2 whales are hanging out when they notice a fishing vessel floating above them. The first whale says to second, you know what'd be fun? If we swam up underneath that boat and both blew air out of our blowholes at the same time. The second whale thinks this sounds kind of fun, so he goes along, and they swim up the surface, blast the boat, and then return to the depths as it capsizes, and the helpless crew all fall into the ocean. The second whale says, wow, that was pretty fun. And first whale says, you know what would be even better? If we swam back up and ate a couple of those guys. The second whale replies, whoa, whoa, whoa. Now I'm fine with an occasional blowjob, but I refuse to swallow semen. A married couple are waiting at home watching TV when their teenage daughter and her date come in and head to the kitchen to have some ice cream. The father is tossing peanuts up into the air and catching them in his mouth. While one is up in the air, he hears a loud, quick gasp from the kitchen. He turns his head and the peanut falls straight into his ear. He starts shaking his head, but can't get it out. His wife starts freaking out and repeating, "What do I do? What do I do?" This gets the attention of the young couple. The boyfriend walks up to the father calmly and tells him to hold still because he knows exactly what to do. The boyfriend sticks a finger up each of the father's nostrils and tells him to blow out his nose as hard as he can. Sure enough, the peanut flies out of his ear. The boyfriend and daughter go back to the kitchen. The mother, relaxing now, says, "What a clever young man. I wonder what he'll be when he grows up." The father said, "Judging by the smell of his finger, our son-in-law." A young boy is playing in his parents' room when he hears his mother arrive home. Since he's not allowed to be in there and doesn't want to be caught, he hides in the closet before his mother walks in with a man who is not the boy's father. The couple are just starting to undress when they hear the father's car pull into the driveway. Panicking, the mother tells the man to hide in the closet. So the boy and the man are sitting there together. "It's dark in here," says the boy. "Yep," replies the man. "I have a baseball," says the boy. "That's great, kid." "Wanna buy it?" the boy asks. "Not really, kid." So the boy continues, "My dad owns a lot of guns." Realizing what's happening, the man asks, "All right, what will it cost to keep you quiet?" $50. So the man gives the boy his money for the baseball, and once the coast is clear, they both slip out and on their way. A few weeks later, the boy is playing in his parents' room again, and the mother comes home with the same man. When the father arrives, they again find themselves hiding together in the closet. "It's dark in here," says the boy. "Yep, I have a baseball mitt." "Great, kid. What will it cost me this time?" $50, replies the boy. They make their exchange and wait until the coast is clear. Another week goes by before they find themselves hiding together in the closet again. "It's dark in here," says the boy. "Let me guess," says the man. "You have a baseball bat you'd like to sell me?" "Yep, $100. The following weekend, the boy's father asks him if he'd like to go outside and play catch. "We can't," the boy tells him. "I sold my glove and baseball and bat." "Why would you do that?" his father asks. "I got $200 for them," the boy tells him. Shocked, the father says, "I can't believe you would take advantage of one of your friends like that. Tomorrow morning when we go to church, you're going straight into confession and asking forgiveness for what you've done." So the next morning they go to church, and the boy's father sends him straight into the confessional. "It's dark in here," says the boy, and the priest replies, "Don't start that shit with me again, kid." A priest and a rabbi are walking down the street when they see a little boy. The priest says, "Let's screw that boy." The rabbi replies, "Out of what?" Omar Sharif goes to a Tina Turner concert and watches from the front row. After the show, a bouncer comes up to him and says, "Sir, Ms. Turner would like to meet you. Would you like to come backstage?" He agrees, of course, and goes backstage to meet Tina Turner. One thing leads to another, and they end up back at his hotel room, having sex. He fucks her absolutely rigid, for hours, until finally he's done. "Holy shit, Omar, that was fantastic," says Tina. "Can we do it again?" "Well, in a bit. I'm an old man now, I need a quick nap first. While I'm asleep, I need you to wrap both your hands around my dick and hold it really tight." A bit puzzled, but desperate for some more sweet Sharif loving, she agrees and wraps both hands around Omar's dick while he sleeps. When he wakes up, he bangs the living shit out of her. She's climbing the walls. He's throwing her all over the place. She can barely think straight. When they're done, she's out of breath, but still game. "Any chance of some more, Omar?" she asks. Again, he says, "Okay, but I need another quick nap first." Same as before. "I need you to wrap both your hands around my dick and hold it tight while I sleep." Again, she's puzzled but does it. When he wakes up again, Tina's gagging for a third scene too, and Omar gives her the shafting of her life. I mean, he ruins her, totally screws her into the ground. At the end of it, the room's a complete wreck where they've been fucking for about 12 hours, all over the place. Tina's out of breath and finally satisfied. So how come you're such a fantastic lover, Omar? She asks. Is it because you're from the Middle East? No, he replies. That's got nothing to do with it. Okay then, she asks. Was it because I held your dick in both hands while you slept? No, that wasn't it either, he replies. Confused, she asks, so why did I have to do that then? Well, he replies, last time I fucked a black chick, she stole my wallet while I was asleep. A prim and proper British girl is marrying a Greek guy. Her father tells her, if you two are ever in bed and he asks you to turn over, don't do it. After they're married, a few months pass, but her husband has never asked her to turn over. After 6 months, he still hasn't asked her to turn over. Then one fateful night, her husband says, Sweetie, I need you to turn over. Why? She asks, terrified. Well, the Greek says, don't you want to make a baby? Two married buddies are out drinking one night when one turns to the other and says, you know, I don't know what else to do. Whenever I go home after we've been out drinking, I turn the headlights off before I get to the driveway. I shut off the engine and coast into the garage. I take my shoes off before I go into the house. I sneak up the stairs. I get undressed in the bathroom. I ease into bed and my wife still wakes up and yells at me for staying out so late. His buddy looks at him and says, well, you're obviously taking the wrong approach. I screech into the driveway, slam the door, storm up the steps, throw my shoes into the closet, jump into bed, rub my hands on my wife's ass and say, how about a blowjob? And she's always sound asleep. Monica Lewinsky takes a dress to her dry cleaner. Do you think you'll be able to get the stain out? She asks. Come again? The man at the counter responds. No, mustard this time, Monica replies. Jim and Edna were both patients in a mental hospital. One day while they were walking past the hospital swimming pool, Jim suddenly jumped into the deep end. He sank to the bottom of the pool and stayed there. Edna promptly jumped in to save him. She swam to the bottom and pulled Jim out. When the director of nursing became aware of Edna's heroic act, she immediately ordered her to be discharged from the hospital, as she now considered her to be mentally stable. When she went to tell Edna the news, she said, Edna, I have good news and bad news. The good news is you're being discharged, since you were able to rationally respond to a crisis by jumping in and saving the life of another patient. I have concluded that your act displays sound-mindedness. The bad news is that Jim, the patient you saved, hung himself in his bathroom with the belt of his robe right after you saved him. I am so sorry, but he's dead. Edna replied, Oh, he didn't hang himself. I put him there to dry. Now, how soon can I go home? When NASA was preparing for the Apollo project, it took the astronauts to a Navajo reservation in Arizona for training. One day, a Navajo elder and his son came across the space crew, who were walking among the rocks. The elder, who spoke only Navajo, asked a question. His son translated for the NASA people. What are these guys in the big suits doing? One of the astronauts said they were practicing for a trip to the moon. When his son relayed this comment, the Navajo elder got all excited and asked if it would be possible to give the astronauts a message to deliver to the moon. Recognizing a promotional opportunity when he saw one, a NASA official accompanying the astronaut said, Why certainly, and told an underling to get a tape recorder. The Navajo elder's comments into the microphone were brief. The NASA official asked the son if he would translate what his father had said. The son listened to the recording and laughed uproariously. But he refused to translate. So the NASA people took the tape to a nearby Navajo village and played it for other members of the tribe. They too laughed long and loudly, but also refused to translate the elder's message to the moon. Finally, an official government translator was summoned. After he finally stopped laughing, the translator relayed the message. "Watch out for these assholes. They've come to steal your land." One afternoon, a Scotsman was riding in his limousine when he saw two Englishmen along the roadside eating grass. He immediately ordered his driver to stop, and he got out to investigate. He asked one man, "Why are you eating grass?" "We don't have any money for food," the poor man replied. "We have to eat grass." "Well then, you can come with me to my house and I'll feed you," the Scotsman said. "But sir, I have a wife and 2 children with me. They are over there, under that tree." "Bring them along," the Scotsman replied. Turning to the other poor man, he stated, "You too come with us." The second man, in a pitiful voice, then said, "But sir, I also have a wife and 6 children with me." "Bring them all as well," the Scotsman answered magnanimously. They all entered the car, which was no easy task, even for a car as large as the limousine was. Once underway, one of the poor English fellows turned to the Scotsman and said, "Sir, you are too kind. Thank you for taking all of us with you." The Scotsman replied, "Glad to do it. You'll really love my place. The grass is almost a foot high." George Clooney asks a man if the man's wife will sleep with him for $1 million. The man asks George to give him a day to think about it. Next day, the man comes back and says his wife said yes, but she needs more time to raise the money. 4 guys have been going to the same golfing trip to St. Andrews for many years. 2 days before the group is to leave, Jack's wife puts her foot down and tells him he isn't going and that she's got something else planned. Naturally, Jack's mates are very upset that he can't go, but what can they do? 2 days later, the 3 get to St. Andrews only to find Jack sitting at the bar with 4 drinks set up. "Wow, Jack, how long you been here? And how did you talk your missus into letting you go?" they say with astonishment. "Well, actually, I've been here since last night. You see, yesterday evening, I was sitting in my living room chair, and my wife came up behind me and put her hands over my eyes and asked, 'Guess who?' I pulled her hands off, and there she was, wearing only a see-through nightie. She took my hand and pulled me into our bedroom. On her bedside table, I saw the book 50 Shades of Grey. She had lit candles and sprinkled rose petals around, and on the bed she had handcuffs and ropes. Then she slipped off her nightie, laid on the bed and said, 'Okay, tie me up, handcuff me to the bed, and do whatever you want.' So, here I am. A man kills a deer and takes it home to cook for dinner. Both he and his wife decide that they won't tell the kids what kind of meat it is, but will give them a clue and let them guess. The dad said, 'Well, it's what mommy calls me sometimes.' The little girl screamed to her brother, 'Don't eat it. It's an asshole.'